All right, got audio. Let me see if the camera comes on now. Hold on a sec. I was clicking it over and over, and it was like nothing. Like it wasn't responding.
Meetings in general have been fucking wonky lately. Like especially Teams. I can't. It's like I got to click back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on the links, and finally it'll let me in.
Yeah,
It's weird.
my camera's always has problems. I got a fucking DSLR for a webcam, and it's just always been a fucking issue. I have to like turn it off and on multiple times to get it to register.
Yeah, dude. I usually have to walk around behind my shit and like unplug it and plug it back in. And I'm just like, I cannot fucking believe I actually have to do this.
See, all right, there we go.
Boom.
What's up, man?
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Fucking
Lights up
lights making me look pale as fuck. All right, whatever. How's my audio sound to you, brother?
Good.
Okay, cool. Cool. So what I'm trying to do here is not just like, I definitely don't want to talk about credit repair hardly at all.
Yeah.
What I want to do is really expose my network to cool people. Like, I was at Renee's deal, and he had I don't know if you know this DJ Clinton Sparks guy, but he was pretty cool, and he's like a Grammy award winning like DJ and like whatever the fuck else they all do, but producer and stuff. And he was like, meet dope people, be their friends, do dope shit together. And it was like, yep, that's what I want to do.
That sounds cool.
What I want to chat about is like the investment stuff that you do. And I wanted just to kind of lead into a conversation, not only of like, hey, who is this for? Where and when should they think about it? Just like all the questions that normally come along with it. But then I'd like to get into kind of like the power of equity and really tapping into real estate as an investment, because I don't think like people are still on. I think the conversation and like the principles of it, then what I want to be able to do is when I cut this up, kind of explain equity, like, because people just aren't grasping the power of like home equity as a tool to make fuck tons of money, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to chat a little bit about like the like getting qualified for an investment property, maybe how someone makes, like what the concepts are around like making money on it short term, or like the rent of it, right? But then the long-term equity play of it. And then once we kind of get done with that, just a couple other like little questions. I think that'll be people's hot button, and kind of what they look to you for in like your expertise of like marketing and systems. I want to ask, and you tell me if any of this is off. Like, I want to be like, all right, I'm going to ask the question that everybody always asks, like, what CRM do you use, right? And then just a little bit like why, and then throw you a curveball of saying, all right, if that CRM didn't exist, or if I was a new loan officer starting, what would your second suggestion be and why? And then at that we'll be at least 40-45 minutes anyway.
Cool.
So,
all right.
Is there anything else that you like want me to lead into? Because I'm really like, I'm just happy to have you on, brother, and and appreciate you. And I want to make sure that I'm covering whatever you want to cover too, so that it's of use to you.
Yeah, no, I'm good, man, with whatever topics you feel are good. And I don't really have an agenda other than just jump on and support, dude. It's all good.
Perfect, dude. Well, I appreciate you. Okay, so let's see here.
Is this going out to like loan officer networks, or is it going to like just consumer direct type of deal?
Well, so what I wanted to do is have my people chop it up so that it can be both, really.
Cool. Okay.
And so that's why I want to make sure I'm serving you too and doing it, and that it's not just for me, because my audience is loan officers, right? Like my main one. So I want to show like this is what a cool, productive loan officer looks like, who's already thought through all the shit you're stressing about right now, and just get like a few nuggets from you on that. But then I also want there to be part of it that's absolutely speaking to that person who's considering investing and not understanding the power of equity and stuff like that. So I'll kind of flow back and forth, not back and forth. I'll start on, we'll start with the investing stuff, and then we'll flow into like the just the CRM question.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And if I suck at this, you're like my first one trying to do it like more like a chit chat style. So I
Good.
appreciate you, dude. So what do you want me, like when I'm referring to you, do you want, if I'm referencing something, do you want it to be Loans by JB? Do you want it to be New Home? What
Stay Loans by JB is the brand I built, I guess, so
perfect. That is what we'll do. All right. Probably just gonna kick it off, like I guess in like 5 seconds or something. Those things is what they do. So let me see if I get any better light. No. No. All right, pale it is. All right. No, that's not how I want to start. All right. All right, cool. Very excited to bring you one of my good buddies here, Mr. JB Justin Brown, built the brand Loans by JB. Sir, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for being on. I got to tell you, I think I'm going to get the most value out of this, and then anybody watching it is going to be able to pick up on these little nuggets that you constantly put out. If you follow Justin Brown on social, how can they find you? Because you're on there.
Loans by JB, mainly Instagram's the platform I spend a lot of time on. But yeah, Loans by JB.
Yeah. And I love your stuff, and you're so consistent about it. And we'll get into that here later. But one of the things you talk about fairly often is investment properties. And I really wanted to, and financing investment properties. And I really wanted to get into this subject because it's kind of that next level of understanding home ownership, the power of home ownership as an investment. You hear a lot of clients get hung up on like, oh, I'm looking for my forever home. And just right away, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're not understanding the concepts of the growth of this. So tell me just broad, and then we'll narrow down, like, why do you get passionate about helping people finance investment properties and investment properties in general?
Well, I like investment properties a lot because it's an asset that puts money in your pocket every month, right? Where your primary residence takes money out of your pocket every month, and it's for the long term, right? When you go to retire in the future, you build equity, you can do things with it. It's all good, but it's for savings. So when you buy a primary home, money's coming out of your pocket every month to build something for the future. With an investment property, ideally, no money's coming out of your pocket every month. Money's going into your pocket every month, and you're still building something for the future, because somebody else is paying it off for you. So I just think it's a super powerful and awesome concept that I think should be at the forefront of people's minds when they're looking at buying their first home, or after they buy their first home, what they should be focusing on doing for their future. Again, it's just, there's a lot that, you got your 401k, you got your primary home, and whatever you're putting in that, it might be enough, it might not. Statistically, it's not going to be enough for a lot of people to retire when they get to that age. But if you start using your money to buy assets that pay you more money, it starts to compound over time. And I feel like it's something that a lot of people should be taking advantage of.
Can you think of a tool or a vehicle that could provide your average person with more of a potential return than real estate? Like, is there another one that like comes to mind?
Your own business, starting your own business, becoming self-employed, and going all in on that could potentially exponentially pay you more than real estate. But then you could also use that money to go start building real estate. But I think, the only other thing I could think of, honestly, is getting lucky, winning the lottery, inheriting money, trust fund baby, or starting a business. Other than that, I haven't seen anything that has the power that I've seen real estate have for myself and other people.
Yeah, and I love the functionality of real estate too, right? Like if all of a sudden something happens and you have an investment property, it can become a primary, right? Like and so like
Yeah.
there's just nothing else out there that it's like I could go live in this, I could go spend time in this, I could, rent it out. It just doesn't really there's not really a similar vehicle for both the the investment side of it
Yeah.
and the use side of it. So
and and with anything in life, it comes down to sacrifice and delaying gratification if you want the results, if you want the rewards, right? So if you're in your 20s or 30s, you're trying to buy your first home and you want to keep up with the Joneses and get this nice house, and like, oh no, I can't live in a duplex or a quadplex or a fourplex because I don't like the neighborhood so much or whatever, then that's fine. But you're going to really limit what you could do after you become house poor on that first property,
yeah,
versus the first home I bought, I think I was 28. I bought a fourplex
yeah,
and I didn't like the area. I knew for sure, I'm like, I'm not staying around here, but I, dealt with it for a year. I commuted. I lived rent mortgage free. My mortgage payment at the time, I think, was $1,600 a month. And it was bringing in, the other 3 units were bringing in $2,200 a month. And so
oh,
I got to live there for nothing. And it was really easy to save another 5% down over those 12 months when I didn't have a housing expense.
yeah.
It was absolutely worth the sacrifice.
Yeah. Okay. So talk more about that. Like, let's talk about a couple different situations where it's like, hey, just remember this should be an investment property. So you talked about when you went to school. Let's talk about 10 years down the road, my kids going to school. Okay. And I'm about to have to pay room and board for them. Isn't that an excellent situation where I could
Yeah.
buy a house, rent it out, and do some things like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, buy it. You could buy a multi-unit for them. You could co-sign for them. So it could be their primary home. So you could still do low down payment, rent out other rooms, rent out other units. So let's say you get a 4 unit and they're all 2 bedroom units. Well, your child lives in one of the units and rents out a room. And then you could either rent out rooms in all those other units for student housing, or just rent them out to, as a regular long-term rentals, whatever the case may be. But yeah, then again, you have other people paying that for you and hopefully making some cash flow on it. But yeah, I'd rather do that than pay for my kids' college at the end of the day. I'd rather
Yeah.
buy them a property, even buy them a property now. And then when the time comes when they're ready for college, then they at least have an asset that they could sell. We could refinance, pull cash out, do whatever. We have options with it to maybe put them through school.
That's a great idea. What about everybody's big on let me pause for a second. Somebody wants to do an investment property, okay? What in general, when I'm coming to you, do I have to have 50% down? Do I have to have an 800 credit score? What do I usually look like as an investor buying a property?
So if you're trying to just flat out buy an investment property, you're not going to live in it, straight up investment, 20% down typically, for a multi-unit.
Okay.
If you want to buy a single family, do a full doc loan, 15% down. Going to need credit scores. They range depending on what program you're doing, anywhere from 660 on the low end, with 25% down, to, up. The higher your credit score, the better rate you're going to get. You could potentially go down to 15% down on a conventional loan on a single family, 20% down if you're trying to buy units. But that's basically the main way to do it.
Okay. Yeah, so that's not near as bad as I think most people think, right? Like they think they're going to have to come in with 50% with an 800 credit score. And so
Yeah.
really, if you have your ducks in a row, maintain good credit and have some money set aside for a smart investment, it's something that a lot of people could actually do for themselves and their family.
And what a lot of people don't realize is it doesn't need to be in your area or in your market. I have 40 units all out of state. I live in California. I don't own any more rentals out here. I have multiple properties out here, but they're all flips. So I have 3 flips on the market, right? And 2 of them we just put on the market. One's about to close next week. We just opened escrow on 2 other flips. So I have lots of properties in California that I use for income, to flip them, generate income. But then I go buy cheap out of state properties. We picked up 2 in the last 60 days, 45 days in Indiana. One of them we got for 67,000 and the other one we got for, I think, 50,000. They both need work. We're going to renovate them. They'll be worth about 120 when we're done. They each need about 30,000 in renovation. So we'll have instant equity. They'll cash flow. And you're able to finance a lot of that. We're using hard money loans, private capital. There's different options, but what I'm getting at is 20% down on a $50,000 or $100,000 property isn't bad at all.
Yeah, that's not that crazy.
So I talked to
and you
people.
know that people, when they're thinking about investment properties, they're thinking something close. It's because they're thinking like how investment properties used to be. I need to be able to go there. I need to be able to look at this. I need to be able to check in on it. So talk a little bit about the strategies that you're talking about in buying out-of-state investment properties. So starting, like you said, it could range anywhere from 15 to 25% down, depending on various factors. But then you have that house. What systems are you putting in place to make it make sense for you to buy something so far away?
So there's definitely steps from soup to nuts, right? So from finding the properties, for one, picking the market. So there's steps I take to pick the market. I look at population growth. I look at the average income in the area. I look at the rents I'm going to be trying to get in the area, and I want to make sure that the average income in that area is at least 3 times the rents. I look at, the job industry there. I like to see it tied heavier to education and medical, because those are more stable types of jobs for areas. If it's tied to a military base and then that base shuts down or something happens, then what, if it's tied to like one big company, like an Amazon factory, and there's nothing else around, again, then what happens is something changes. So I look for spots like that. Sometimes people find them before me and they start to already trend to that. You'll see other investors all flock into a market. And if the numbers make sense there, I'll jump in that market too, if everything looks good. But so there's initial market research. I use some different sites for that and kind of narrow that down. And then once I pick a market, I start then trying to build a team, a boots on the ground team. I start looking at property managers in the area. I'll look up a bunch of realtors in the area that seem like they have good production. I'll start picking their brain. Hey, do you have any contractors? Do you have any property managers? I'm an investor. I'm looking to maybe start buying out there, and they're happy to help, so then I'll want to make sure there's a good selection of property managers. If there's only 2 in the area, then I'm not going to do it, because if you're kind of gridlocked between them and if they suck, it's like, oh, well, what other choice do you have? Versus if there's 20 property managers in the area, then I got options and they're more likely to, want my business more, versus knowing I have no other option. Right. And then contractors, same thing, trying to just get reviews. I'll go on like investor forums. There's a great website or a community called Bigger Pockets. I'll go on investor groups on Facebook. So if I buy stuff in the Cleveland area and South Bend, Indiana, other markets, I'll go on Facebook Marketplace or groups and search investor group Cleveland, investor group, right? Yeah. And I'll start asking people for recommendations for contractors, property managers, all of that. So I kind of get a lay of the land, start looking for properties. If I find a property, then I start running numbers to make sure it looks like it'll cash flow. Just because my mortgage payment's $1,000 a month and the rents are $1,500 a month, I'm not going to make $500 a month on that. I have to figure out what's property management going to cost me. 10% typically. How much am I going to put away every month for repairs and for vacancies, right? Yeah. If the property is in good condition, like the properties I'm renovating, I'm going to go in and renovate it. It should be minimal repairs and deferred maintenance. I'm going to put aside 10% a month for that. Yeah. If it's a property that's like in pretty, rough condition, I'm not really going to do anything for a while, then I'll probably put 20% aside for that. Utilities. If it's a multi-unit, are utilities split? Are you paying the water for the entire building? Are you paying the gas, or is it separated? Are there any common area utilities you still got to pay for? If it's a multi-unit, you're paying for lawn care. The tenants aren't. If it's a single family, typically the tenant pays for everything, right? So it's understanding how to analyze it, right? All the fixed expenses that are in writing, mortgage payment, taxes, insurance, all the variable expenses like utilities that could fluctuate, and then the anticipated expenses that it might not be happening right now, doesn't need it right now, but it will need repairs. It will need a water heater at some point. It will have vacancies, So then it's crunching the numbers and making sure, okay, with all these factored in, there's no guarantees on anything, but I'm doing my due diligence. I'm taking a calculated risk. I'm using numbers, not emotions, right? And if that works, then great. write an offer, go into contract. If the numbers make sense, once we're under contract, I start verifying all that. I ask for 12 months of utility bills. I start calling property managers to verify the rents that I saw I could get, that it's not in an area that they're going to be afraid to go to. I don't like buying in war zones. I bought a property next to a bar once, and that was a nightmare. It's just a lot of problems, people hanging out and stuff. So there's just little lessons I've learned. So there's due diligence. And then once it closes, you have the team running it at that point. And the beauty about buying out of state is it forces you to run it like a business, because you can't go change the toilet or the lights or do things yourself. You can't handle any emergencies at 2 a.m. So you're more likely to have to hand it off to a team to run it for you. So that's what I like, is it forces you to actually run it like a business.
Yeah, that's a great point. As you were saying everything, I was literally thinking well, no, it's all great. Like I'm learning right now. I appreciate it. But I was literally thinking like, wow, this is a business, not a rental, right? Like it really is like the name of the game is rental, but you're truly running it like a business. And I like what you said, like, well, you have to. I mean, you're thousands of miles away. I remember back in the day, I had a rental that was only like an hour away, but it was horrible. And it was like an older house, and I was pretty poor. And so they'd call me like, there's water coming in. And I'd be like, well, I mean, put a bucket under it and I'll get somebody there Monday. I don't know. Right. Yeah. So, and that's not how I should have run it. I was 20 years old and didn't know, but that's such a great, and if you run those numbers and you're prepared for it, then worst case scenarios are built in. And that means that anything better than a worst case scenario, you're that much more profitable on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's times where you have unexpected expenses that if things come up in the first year, you could run at a negative the first year. So you got to have some reserves for that. But then it should, over time, it should balance out with those numbers, because those are basically the same numbers all investors are using, that big funds are using, that are buying blocks of properties. These are just standard practice numbers, because that's the average of what you could expect. So yeah, it's another thing too, is like with I have short-term rentals as well. So all my long-term rentals, teams run it. I don't get involved in it. But with short-term rentals like Airbnbs, they charge a lot to manage those. So property management on a long-term rental in an expensive market like LA, you could expect to pay 6%. Out of state cheap markets, you could expect to pay around 10%. But on an Airbnb short-term rentals, it's anywhere from 20 to 30%. It's heavy. So we bought an Airbnb, and I gave that a shot running it with my wife, and it's actually pretty easy. Same thing. We have a team. We have automations through I think it's called a something manager. It's like a CRM, but for your Airbnb, right? So when somebody checks in, it automatically sets the code on the Schlage door to the last 4 of their cell phone from the time of check-in to the time of checkout. I don't have to lift a finger. It automatically sends a task list to the cleaner. And then when the cleaner, if we need supplies, the cleaner lets me know. I ship them to her house, and then she takes them to the property. We have a handyman whose son mows the lawn. We set that up, and does the trash cans for us every week. The handyman will come do things when we need stuff from him, and it's all pretty automated. We have automated messages. As soon as you book and check in, you book it, you get a welcome from us with all this stuff. A day before you check in, you get some stuff. Midway through your stay, you get some stuff. Before checkout, you get the instructions. So it's pretty hands off. There's sometimes we get messages and questions that we'll just answer. If we get the question more than a couple times, it goes in the handbook and it goes in the automations, but that has actually been kind of easy to manage ourselves. Well, same thing, but we have a boots on the ground team though,
Yeah, that seems even more so. Like, even though you're having to pay more for the management, when you again look at it like a business, you're like, A plus B makes me C. It's like, yeah, I'm totally good with those numbers, right? As long as you kind of throw away like, oh, I'm traditionally used to only paying somebody 10%. The numbers still are great.
You run the numbers on an Airbnb and you're like, this 30% property management makes it not worth it. Well, then watch some YouTube videos on self-managing an out-of-state Airbnb. And there's some great books. What is it? Short-term rental, long-term wealth is one I read that really helped me set mine up and automate it. And if it seems like, you know what, I could do it myself and save 30%, then do it. Because believe me, I'm a fan of delegating, automating. I don't want to deal with it. And it's actually been pretty easy to run our Airbnb that we have out of state.
I feel like just knowing myself that I might end up frustrated and angry if I dealt with like my own Airbnbs, right? Because like every mess is going to feel a little disrespectful if you're connecting yourself to it on like a personal level as opposed to an investment or a business, right? So
when it comes to investing in real estate, fall in love with the numbers, not the property. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Fall in love with the numbers. And well, obviously you want to make sure it's in an area that makes sense. Like you don't want to buy in a really horrible area because that will be problems.
Yeah.
But mainly just fall in love with the numbers, treat it like a business, and it will be a business, you know, that pays you.
Absolutely. And so on that same vein, so you talked about, you know, maybe not making as much money in the first couple of years, which I would especially just plan for, right? Because you don't know about the water heater or the whatever. But the cool thing about this is long term, you're fine because you put a water heater in, and that sucks because that's whatever, let's call it $9,000. But if you accidentally buy the water heater that I got sold instead of
yeah, I'm like, mine's $600. What are you talking about?
No, they got my wife. They sold her on this hybrid that cools your garage down, just total BS. So let's say 3,000, okay? But that increases your home value by a new water heater, right? Like with real estate, it works out that if you do have to improve your home, you're still constantly improving the value as long as you bought right in the beginning.
And honestly, if you don't want to have to deal with a bunch of deferred maintenance, then buy a turnkey rental. Buy something that's already been, you know, taken care of, put together, like what we're doing. We're coming in and we're renovating them and then renting them out. So we're not going to have to deal with as much as that stuff because we're just cleaning them all up front. And then you could also get a home warranty when you close. That covers the water here, covers, you know, just like when you buy a primary home, you could get a home warranty on an investment property. And you do inspections during the escrow process. I have people run a scope down the sewer line on one of the properties I bought. We found root intrusion and it was a $5,000 deal, but we found it during inspections and the seller paid for it. Yeah. You know, we have all that checked out with home inspections and an appraisal. So you know, there's no home inspector or appraiser that I know more than. So I'm not going to go to, so me being at the home inspection or me being there with the appraiser, like I'm not going to help in any way, you know? So I let them do their jobs just like the rest of the team. And either the numbers all work out at the end and I close, or something comes up that I can't get an agreement on with the seller, or the numbers no longer make sense and I'm out.
Yeah, you make a business decision. Let me ask this to kind of wrap this up. What do you think, sorry to put you on the spot here, but what do you think are maybe 2 or 3 things? So I'll say it a different way to lead into the edited version, but what are 3 things that you think are misconceptions or just flat out, you know, myths out there that would stop people from becoming an investor?
Misconceptions about becoming an investor: that it's not worth it. There's too many headaches. You're going to be dealing with problems all the time. No, my property manager might, but not me. And then another one is that it's like you're going to get rich off one rental property. It's a long game. It's a snowball effect. You're not going to buy one rental, one fourplex, or 2 or 3, and all of a sudden be able to quit your job. It's like a 10-year process. If you buy one every year for 10 years, it starts to become a compound snowball effect. And then, yeah, absolutely, in 10 years or so of focusing on this and investing and building through real estate, it absolutely can become that. So it's not a get rich quick thing. I don't know anything that is. If you just, like I was saying before, starting a business is a great way to make a lot of money, but that's not get rich quick either. That's going to take a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And then I guess number 3 is how hard it is to maybe qualify. It's not hard to, it's actually easier to qualify for an investment property loan than a primary residence loan. Because with the investment property loan, there's these DSCR loans where you just, the rents just need to match the mortgage payment and you don't need to show any income. As long as let's say the mortgage payment's $1,000 a month and the market rents are $1,000 a month, you qualify. As long as you have a 660 to 680 score and are putting at least 20% down, you qualify for the most part. Wow. I would never buy a property that has the rents match the mortgage payment, because like I told you, there's other things you got to factor in. The numbers I look for with rates as high as they are, I usually won't even start running numbers on a property unless I see that the market rents on it are at least 1.5 to 2% of the price. So if a home is $100,000, I want to see that market rents are at least $1,500 a month. And if I do, then I'll start kind of digging into numbers from there and seeing if I like it. So obviously any property I'm buying will qualify for DSCR all day, because what they're looking for is if the mortgage payment's 1,000 and the rents are 1,000, that's considered a 1-to-1 ratio. And that qualifies for DSCR. I will never buy at a 1-to-1 ratio. I buy higher than that. Yeah. So that's just a piece of advice too. If you are buying a property and it's a 1-to-1 ratio or whatever, I'd be very careful, because that's probably not going to make sense cash flow wise. Yeah. Unless it's maybe an Airbnb and you're using different, you're going to be getting different rents than long-term rents, because the long-term rents might only be $2,000 a month on my Airbnb, but it's bringing in like $5,000 a month as a short-term rental.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So I heard you say 660, 680. So it's fair to say that credit is not necessarily prohibitive if you don't have an 800, but maintaining pretty good credit is definitely a qualifier here.
It is. And then building your credit too is important, because there's just other opportunities that go as you're building your portfolio, as you buy your first or second rental property and you start diving into other strategies on how to scale even further. Credit is just, it gets more and more important. I'm raising private capital right now to fund mine. The 5 flips and 2 long-term rentals. So I've bought 7 properties since May, all using 100% other people's money, all private capital, but I have good credit. I have assets, I'm signing, I'm putting a personal guarantee on it. We're putting them as the lenders. They're in first lien position on the loan, but I'm not even having to go through banks anymore for it. But credit's super important when you start going down that road of trying to scale even further.
Yeah, and especially too when you're getting into more of those like niche products, they want to see that the person they're working with is that person that they're going to get paid back on, right?
Yeah.
Like the investment properties, the hard money stuff like that. That's a whole different ball game, and there's just no situation where having really great credit doesn't make things significantly easier.
Yeah.
So, okay. Awesome information on that. I have got so much to digest. I'm going to go back through that myself and go out and buy some properties. God damn it. But,
so I do really quick. My Instagram page at Loans by JB, if you go to the link in my bio, there's a thing where you could join my community. Ooh. And by joining my community, basically you just get on my newsletter. I send out once a week, and on that once a week email, I'll have some sort of like tip or hack on buying properties and real estate. But then I also have deals that look good, like, hey, here's a long-term rental that numbers look good on it, here's the returns I'm seeing. Here's a short-term rental, numbers look good, here's what I'm seeing, here's the address, here's the listing. So because I'm constantly searching properties, and there's ones I don't want, doesn't mean they're not good. It just means it's going to tie up too much of my money, because I'm doing things a little differently right now where I'm essentially using none of my money. So if I buy a property in 6 months, I want to be able to pull 100% of my capital out and be in it for nothing. Not all properties allow that. Some properties, you're going to be in this for about 20,000 or 30,000, but it makes you 15% on your money. So, it's not good. It's not what I want right now, but I'm sending it out to people on my newsletter. But also when you subscribe to that newsletter, you get all my rental calculators for Airbnbs, for fix and flips, for long-term rentals, and there's videos to show you how to do it.
So much stuff that someone would have to spend quite a few failures figuring out or trying, and you're just giving it to them.
Yeah.
You're nice, JB. All right, Loans by JB, everybody, on Instagram, and then sign up for the newsletter. I'm gonna go do that as soon as I'm off here, because I've got a lot to learn. Let me ask you just a couple now more peer-related questions. There's a lot of people in the industry that look to you for obviously your information, your social media, your processes. So let me ask you the most outdated and consistent question. What CRM do you use, Justin Brown?
Go High Level. So I like Go High Level. I was using Jungo for so long. And I spent an ungodly amount of money building it out and doing all this stuff, but I just got tired of having to hire developers or pay developers 80 to 100 an hour every time I wanted changes or new things moved around. Go High Level is like really easy to just do it yourself. You don't need to hire anybody. You could have anybody on your team, a virtual assistant, do it for $5. Like any changes you want are very easy to do. So I really like Go High Level. Yeah. So
that's awesome. I've heard really nothing but good stuff about them. And when I was in Dallas at Rene Rodriguez's event the other week, they were actually having their event across town. And if it was any other thing, I was going to skip out and go to it, but I had to stick at AMP.
I like it. I like it. For my LOS though, I am using Lodasoft, Lodasoft. It's a newer system that is pretty awesome, like runs DU credit, all that, but then it also has a lot of automations you could build out in it. So I'm trying to see, yeah, Lodasoft. So I'm trying to see if I could actually have an all-in-one solution finally, because it's always been integrations and, multiple systems and multiple subscriptions, where Lodasoft might, from what I'm seeing, I might be able to just be in one spot, which is pretty cool.
So you're saying you think that Lodasoft might replace even Go High Level?
I think so.
So. Okay.
Yeah. Working on it. You always hear what it can do. Yes, it could do that. It could do that. So we're working through it right now to make sure it could do all that. So
yeah, I went through like 9 months of a company being like, we are going to build you your own CRM. And I was like, this is going to be so awesome. We got to 9 months and they're just like, we can't do it. Sorry. Like,
yeah, I've been through that.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, would you make the same recommendation, both Go High Level or hopefully Lodasoft, if somebody they're watching this and they're like, dude, I of course want to be that, but I am so far, I'm just getting started. What is a good starter system, CRM, lead management? What would you recommend in that situation?
Surefire.
It's
an easy plug and play. Just throw your stuff in there. It'll send stuff to your database. You could use it for pipeline management, milestone updates. It's the easiest, most basic system that I would do if you just need something to just throw it in and try not to have to do any heavy lifting.
Yep, that's a really great recommendation. And let's just be clear on this, right? Like if every system that you've mentioned crashed and burned and you had to start over on a basic CRM, you would make that work because the principles are almost all the same, right? Workflows, good communication, building out milestones. So my point is, people just need to get in and get going. If they're sitting on the sidelines, choose something good and get using it, right?
1,000%. My database is where more than half my business comes from. I haven't called a realtor in years. Even now, business is slow, but it's slow for everybody, but it's all still coming from database and social media. And because when I first started originating, I had already been a processor and ops for about 10 years, working for some really good producing loan officers and some really bad loan officers. And when I went on my own and started originating, the number one thing I knew I had to do was have a CRM, was have a database, was save get emails and contacts from everybody I spoke to about mortgages. And whether they're ready to buy now or not ready at all, just drip them with stuff, right? And then stay in front of them. And then everybody that does become a client, track their stuff, know their rates, know their program, know everything, so that if rates drop, if there's opportunities, like I could pull that data in a heartbeat. And I still do that to this day, man.
That's awesome. And that every once in a while, my sales team, as we're thinking about things, will run this like hypothetical end of days scenario where it's like, you can't market to anyone new. All new marketing is shut down. Social doesn't exist to attract new clients. We can only work through our database. Are we viable? And it's like, we are, right? But there's a lot of people that they wouldn't even know what to do with their database, or they don't know where to start. And that's where that average JB comes in. Like, people on average are doing one deal per borrower for their lifetime. It's like there's not repeat business. And that's so silly, right? Like, you close a loan with somebody, you have their trust right now, unless you lose it, right?
Yeah. Well, and my database has become my private lending network now too. I've raised over $3 million in private capital from my database because they've all just known me and trusted me for these years. I've done multiple transactions for them, their family. And then when I started putting together this private capital fund to like do my real estate investing, everybody was like, yeah, we're in, this sounds good. You know what you're doing, so it was my database. My database has been a gold mine on so many fronts, not just mortgages.
That's a great topic. Let me just ask one question on that. If you, again, the scenario, you could only communicate with your database, how is it, or what would you say in terms of content and platform and repetition? Sorry. So how often, really, what are you putting in front of them, and how are you doing it? Is it mostly social, or your newsletters, or your?
So now it's just so I used to just blast, right? Which is better than nothing, honestly. Send them everything, better than sending them nothing. But now I'm trying to get very, very picky and intentional about what I send. So my newsletter, in the past, I would have sent it to all 11,000 people in my database. Now that's past clients, leads, pre-approvals, declines, realtors. That's everybody in my database.
Let them have it.
In the past, it would have gone to all of them, but then the engagement drops, you start going to spam. It just really hurts your deliverability when you start doing that stuff. So now I only send the newsletter to people who opt in. Every time I get a lead, I'm so like tempted to put their name in my newsletter just so they get it. But I'm not only, so I'll send them an article from my newsletter and say, hey, here's an article about loan assumptions that I just wrote about. If you want to subscribe to my newsletter, the link's in there. That's as far as I'll go, and it's on my signature line now, so now I'm very intentional about what I send. But if somebody's in a pre-approval stage, I do have curated emails that talk about home buying for a pre-approved buyer that only that group of people get. If somebody contacted me to buy a house and hasn't filled out their app, I have another curated set of marketing emails that drip on them that talk about the importance of getting pre-approved and having a consultation. So I did create journeys for people in certain segments to really drip on them with those emails. So my advice would be create email journeys, like, 10 pieces of marketing email, pre-create it so it's just ready to go, and have it go to people who haven't done an app with you yet, that are just all leads. And then maybe make a second set of ones for people that are out shopping and pre-approved. And then, maybe just actually make a newsletter that only opt-ins get, like maybe your past clients, stuff like that talks about the market, or whatever content you want to put out. My content is, I'm sending out real estate investing stuff, because after people buy their primary home, the next step is they want to start figuring out other ways to keep growing, right?
Yeah, great stuff. Dive into it just a little bit more. How are you delivering? So first of all, just some points of what you've said in your CRM as you're intaking people. They obviously, you need to go to the lengths of tagging them appropriately and having a lot of different tags available. When I say tags, what I'm saying is descriptions of buyers or things that put them into a certain persona. And then that's allowing JD to be very granular about who he's sending the content to, which means then the deliverability rate and then the action taking on the other end of it is good. Are you doing that through your CRM? Are you coming out through like a Bonzo or a BombBomb, or what are you?
So that was all running through Go High Level.
Okay.
And my virtual was just, we had it synced between our LOS and Go High Level through Zapier, because Go High Level works with Zapier. So we would have them in their appropriate stages and tags that would trigger those campaigns. But now Lotusoft is taking over those. If somebody is a purchase and first-time home buyer, they get this campaign. If somebody's docs requested, meaning we've talked to them, we sent them the app, they're in this campaign. If somebody's in pre-approved stage, so we have the different triggers. And it might seem overwhelming, but I always tell people, just start with one campaign. Just start with a set of 10 emails that could go to first-time home buyers that haven't done your app yet, right? Just start there. And then once that's done in a couple months or a couple weeks, then do the next one. And the next thing you know, you got it and you're done.
And I will shamelessly say this, anybody that's watching, I will help you build your first email campaign, because I have it ready for you. It's about credit education, and we will literally plug that in for you. And what you'll be able to do is drop it down in your CRM or your LOS or whatever, and that's going to be a trigger. And when that trigger says low credit or credit education, that will automatically start sending that series of emails. So, but you got to build one, because once you build one, it's like riding a bike kind of in the sense of you're like, I can do this now. Maybe I could ride faster. Maybe I could ride more. Maybe I could take my hands off the handlebars. Like you build one, and if you built one, that means you can build another. And if you build another, you could build a longer one. And if you built a longer one, oh my God, I wonder if I could also build a delayed action to set a task for my, and then Justin said something else, my VA. So Justin Brown is using CRM, Zapier, virtual assistants, processes to make his business run beautifully in a down market. He's not stressing when other people are.
Yeah. And honestly, I built all this stuff out before COVID. So during COVID, I saw people burning the candle at both ends. I was working 4 days a week. I did 150 mil during COVID, and I was taking every Friday off to go mountain biking or travel. I was working, 30 hours a week because of all my systems and processes that I had built beforehand. But also that had allowed me to run my team really lean, which now where a lot of people are cutting back and stuff, I haven't had to let anybody go or anything because I had already used this system and process to essentially be full-time employees for me for cheap. Go High Level is a very cheap full-time employee for me.
I love that, dude. You do what I call playing on level hard and doing great at it, meaning you're a great family guy. You build a beautiful business. You're a good friend. You take care of yourself and your fitness. There's a lot of people that are like, I'm an amazing businessman. I wake up at this time and I don't go to bed until this time. And, and they glorify not having time for family or the gym. And I'm like, man, it's just not what it's all about. And it's not the hardest thing to do either. Like if I just stop being a good dad, I'll go make a bunch more money. Like that's not what it's all about. But what the cool thing is when you're playing on level hard is that you build the systems that allow you to not make less money or to even make more money while you're being the person that you're actually put here on earth to be, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's just the whole balance thing, I think really helps fuel me and motivate me in a lot of different directions I probably never would have opened my eyes to before. So, waking up early, going to the gym gets me all fired up, having a couple hours to just focus on goals with no calls, no emails before the kids get up. That helps me actually chip away at goals. Yeah. And then I go into the rest of the day happy and confident. And then I feel completely fine shutting down at 5, and being back with the family.
I love it, man. I love it. And I would feel greedy if I took any more of your time on this one, brother. You have given us so much great information. Just last time before we go, people want to get a hold of you. They're going to Instagram and finding you at Loans by JB. Any other ways that you want people to contact you, either for investment information or just to follow you?
Yeah, no, give me a follow on there. Send me a DM on there. Sign up for my investing community to get really cool stuff, the calculators and all that. And that's the best way to connect. And yeah, if you have any questions, reach out, shoot me a DM, and happy to try and help.
Beautiful. JB, thank you so much for your time, sir. I really appreciate you, and you have a great weekend.
All right, you too, man.
Hey, thanks, dude. That was really cool. I enjoyed that, and I learned tons of shit too. That was great. So, yeah, of course, dude. I'll get it all edited up and chopped up. I'll send you over the raw, but I'll also have my people chop it up every which way, and do some stuff like specifically for you. And yeah, dude, thank you. I appreciate it.
Now I'm eventually going to make like a $99 course on here's how to research a market and walk people through every little thing. Here's here's how to run the numbers. Here's the questions to ask. Here's this, a full on course and just $99 or something, but then funneling them in to become a client, oh, I'll help you with the loan too. So, cause it's just trying to figure all that out. But the whole private capital thing has been fucking awesome. Figuring out how to start buying properties with no money out of my pocket. And then
that's the best way to buy shit, right? With no money.
Well, there's properties that I'll look at and I'm like, no, we'll have to leave 30 grand in that one. No, let's move on. Cause it's just, I don't want to leave 30 grand for $100 a month in profit.
Yeah. It has to be, it honestly has to be sexy enough, right?
Yeah. I'd rather invest that in my business or something.
Yeah. It really does. I'll have people come to me with stuff not this, but stuff that it's and then dude, that would make you $2,000 a month. And I'm like, No, I'd rather spend my time and any money on like my website or an app or something, you know? So, oh yeah, dude, I was just thinking this because he called me the other day and I still wasn't thinking it until I was on with you. I met you through Kai, didn't I?
Yeah.
That very
Elite
first
retreat.
mastermind.
Yeah, in like Scottsdale, I think.
Oh yeah, there. And then I saw you like a couple months later at the mortgage mastermind thing in
Totally.
Vegas, right?
Yep.
Yeah, man, that's back when I dressed in like tattered khakis and like polo shirts.
Yeah, me too.
Man.
Probably.
All right, dude. I appreciate it so much. I'll get my team on this. If you need anything, I owe you. You let me know how I can help ever. And just thank you, dude.
No, thank you, man. Awesome.
All right, awesome. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
I would love a credit journey, credit of emails on credit. Like I could even just use yours, if you already have them templated.
Yeah.
That way, anybody we decline for credit, I could just throw them in that fucking journey. That'd be awesome.
I'll send it over to you right now.
Hell yeah! Right on, man.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you.
All right, later.